Meeting of the Acushnet Finance Committee, Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. The first order of business we have this evening is for the budget hearing of the Fire EMS Department, and we have Chief Kevin Gallagher to make the presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
I apologize in advance for the lack of PowerPoint and computer graphics and
We're all very
holograms
disappointed.
and all those
Very
things.
disappointed.
We'll see what we can do next year, seeing that it's such a hit in the past.
You can come back at the end of the session.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for entertaining us tonight. The proposed budget that you have in front of you is a first for this town. It is a combined fire and EMS budget. Previously, we have operated an EMS department budget and a fire department budget, both of them separate. This year, with the direction given to us by the Board of Selectmen to continue working towards a seamless, completely merged fire and EMS department, we felt comfortable that we're at the point where we can offer to you for consideration a combined budget. This will make my life as an administrator much easier, to have just one budget to have to deal with as opposed to two. There should be some lack of transfers at the end of the fiscal year where these are line items that are combined. Where there was just kind of walk you through the structure of it, where there was a line item in fire and a line item in EMS, those numbers have been combined. And in most cases, they're simply level funded from the previous year. I'm ready to speak to those that have the slight increases due to call volume or anticipated increases in services. The salaries, I would like to take a couple of minutes, Mr. Chairman, and kind of walk you through what they reflect and the plans that we have moving forward. Let me bring you up to date as to what's happened in the last 6 months, because it's pretty important. Not only did we have two budgets, but we also had two different unions in the two shops. The firefighters, the full-time firefighters, represented by the International Association of Firefighters, and the full-time, the EMS, part-time and full, were represented by the Teamsters. The EMS employees removed themselves from the Teamsters union earlier this year. They initiated that on their own, based on their own observations and their own concerns. So they had been a entity without union representation. The full-timers, the 3 full-time paramedics, were invited to join the firefighters union, and that occurred in January. So we have the International Association of Firefighters and the Professional Firefighters in Massachusetts representing the 3 full-time firefighters and now the 3 full-time paramedics as well. Mr. Noble and Ms. Hebert have been instrumental in presenting to the part-time EMT staff who used to be in the union a memorandum of understanding of their old contract. So we've memorialized that, and we're following the stipulations of that contract without the weight of unions hanging over our head. That's an agreement between those employees in the town. No one has come screaming and yelling that this isn't working. As a matter of fact, I think the employees appreciate not having union dues to pay every month and still getting the same benefits as far as the town is concerned, having those respected that were previously in their contract. So that was the first true step. We had operationally, we brought the two former single departments as close together as possible. Now there were 2 issues that were stumbling blocks. One was the union. That's now been resolved. And the other is how we hire. The firefighters are in civil service. The EMTs are not. We are in the process of negotiating a contract for the increased firefighters union. And Those discussions continue tomorrow. We believe, or we hope, that before town meeting, we'll have a executed contract, and there may be some changes coming as far as how we hire in the future. I don't really feel comfortable going beyond that, but that last speed bump that would kind of change or make more difficult bringing the two departments together, hopefully will be removed. So, yes, sir.
Chief, sorry, just a quick question. The old contract at the EMTs that you say you're recognizing still with the town, when does that contract expire? How long does that last?
Till June 30th of this year.
And then, what? Any idea? Or
Well, we're in the negotiations now.
With the full-timers?
with the IAF,
Yes.
bring in the part-timers?
No.
No.
The
Part-time.
call firefighters are not represented by a union. The part-timers will not be represented by a union.
Okay.
And, you know, they're okay with that. We're following the language of the previous contract. As far
Right,
as
and then that expires June 30th.
June 30th.
And so then you're free and clear, and there's no,
Mr. Noble, would we entertain extending that memorandum of understanding?
I don't think we'll have to.
no?
Well, I think we're gonna come to a deal.
Okay.
That's the goal. In fact,
Right.
we have negotiations tomorrow. So, I mean, we extended because we were trying to merge the
Well-
departments, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the idea of extending till next June. So we have time to produce a contract with both the former collective bargaining agreements as one.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So just so you know, in the 15 years that I've been the department head, I used to be able to say that I've never had a grievance. Had one this year that was resolved at the town administrator level, never got to the selectmen, never went beyond that. So it's not a bad place to work.
Right.
And I think they recognize that.
So just one question, is this consistent with 150, with some parts of a bargaining unit can withdraw?
Yep, it was all certified by the Department of Labor.
Yep.
It's all been approved.
The Department of Labor actually sent us a letter asking if we wanted to object to them leaving the union. Crazy. So,
So before we get into how much the budget is going to cost, let me tell you where we are as far as revenue. For the first 6 months of fiscal year, July through December, we have collected $276,000. Last year, we collected a little in excess of $600,000 for the entire fiscal year. So you can see that we're slightly behind. We've made several communications with our collection company, ambulance billing company, to see if there's any reasons why, and came back and said everything is working well. We're getting the calls to them in a timely manner. They're processing them in a timely manner. They're not, in the event that it went beyond, collections went beyond a certain period of time, the insurance company has the right to walk away from it. That's not happening. So it's, call volume is up. Collections are slightly down, but it's usually cyclical. We can have a month where we bring in, $40,000 in payments, and then we'll have another month where we bring in $65,000, $70,000 in payments. So I'm counting on hitting the $600,000 revenue for the fiscal year again by the time June rolls around.
So how can the call volume be up and the revenues be down?
There's a lag. Right now, we're probably
On a payment schedule?
collecting from September and October, those calls in September and October. That's the money that's coming in now.
Oh, I see.
Because it takes several months for the insurance company to process. We have adjusted our rates to stay current with what Medicare is paying. So we're doing everything right. It's just a question of the processing by the insurance company.
collections always lag about 90 to 120 days.
So we fully expect that to catch up. So let's take a look at the salaries. This budget is different in a couple of ways. In the EMS budget currently, and going back as far as I know, all of the salaries, full-time and part-time, were in one line item. On the fire side, the full-time firefighters had their own line item, call firefighters had a line item there. So you should know a few things about this proposal. I've calculated in a 2% cost of living adjustment for all of the staff. Now, we're still in the process of negotiating, but thinking that that was a fair estimate, kind of a place marker, so that we can have this conversation, you can see how that impacts the budget. Depending on negotiations, that may go up, it may go down, although it probably won't go down now that we got the cat out of the bag. But any adjustments that will come either for this coming town meeting in the spring, or if we extend negotiations beyond that in the fall, won't have as much of an impact if we go in there with a 2% floor. Well, I shouldn't say floor, because it may go down, but we also have funding in the EMS line item for 4 full-time slots. We currently have 3 full-time paramedic firefighters. I attempted to fill the position in-house, and then we looked outside of the department for a full-time medic. It's a challenge. It's a challenge to find someone that kind of meets all of our criteria, and we set the bar pretty high. So we weren't going to be backed into hiring someone simply because we had the vacancy. We want to make sure it's the right person. And this budget assumes that we'll be able to hire that 4th person. The full-time paramedics have been removed from the previous line item and added to the full-time firefighters. So you see now the full-time positions have increased from what they were at with just the firefighters alone. The part-time paramedics, and remember that we hire 168 hours per week of part-time coverage. The staffed ambulance has 1 full-timer and 1 part-timer. Part-timers work 8-hour shifts. So there's 168 hours for part-time employees per week. That number stands alone in the budget, but we remove the expense of the 4th full-timer from it. So if you look at the sheets that I provided with the cost, you see the cost of a full-time paramedic, firefighter paramedic, that's been removed from the line item for the EMT staff. So the money's still there, we're just putting it in different line items. Okay, am I terribly confusing you? I hope not. So you can see, based upon the fiscal year 20 expected pay rate, the cost of a full-time paramedic is $53,924. That amount of money has been removed from the part-time EMTs and put into the full-time staff. Okay, so it's not, we're not asking for any money to hire a new paramedic. The money has been there. Similarly, on the fire side, 6 years ago, we had a retirement and we never filled the position. We have 4 slots. We're only running with 3 firefighters. It was a decision that was made by the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator at that time. I will tell you that 6 years ago, we weren't as busy as we are now with the ambulance. We're doing 1,000 EMT calls a year now. Back then, we were maybe 600. It's exploded in the last few years. We need to have a full-time firefighter paramedic to fill that 4th slot. Now, before you get frightened, before I frighten you off, we never took that money out of the budget for the 4th person. That was a decision that Mr. Catino made, and I think he made it wisely. We left it in the budget. We used that money at the end of the year to cover the extra expense of overtime for a full-timer who would work that 4th slot, and for a call firefighter who worked that 4th slot. So that money is there. Now, it's been stagnant. It's been in the budget, and it's been subjected to the 2% or the cost of living adjustments, but it's been eaten up by the increase in overtime. So this year, for example, this past year, we had been running about 60-40, 60% of the shifts being covered by full-timers, 40% by the call firefighters. That drastically changed this year. It went as high as 76% by the full-timers. So there's extra demands for overtime on the overtime budget. So now, to get that position fully funded, So we came in at the 6-year-old rate. To bring it up to the 2020 rate is an increase of $12,915, or a 6% increase. That's with a 2% increase over the current fiscal year. So that position is, what do we want to say, 66% included in the current budget. It's just that extra 12,000, 13,000 that would be requiring. And even with that, the overall budget is up only 2.4%. So the game plan is to have, this time next year, 4 full-timers working out of Station 1 and 4 full-timers working out of Station 3 on Middle Road. All of them cross-trained, all of them certified firefighters, all of them certified paramedics. That's going to allow us to, the game plan is to turn on mutual aid. We receive daily requests for an ambulance to go to New Bedford for mutual aid. The problem that I have is if I send the staffed ambulance to the city to answer those calls, we don't have our ambulance adequately staffed all the time. We will, with that 4th slot, we'll always have the paramedic on duty, and now I only have to pick up a part-time basic or someone off duty to come in. So I feel much more comfortable, I think the community would feel much more comfortable going to New Bedford and assisting them, but making sure that we cover our needs as well. So it's part of the overall game plan. We turn on mutual aid to New Bedford, the revenue increases. So the increased expenses that you're seeing, I firmly believe that when we come back, we won't be talking about 300,000 collected halfway through the fiscal year. It will be more than that. Because the City of New Bedford runs 3 ambulances for 100,000 people. And they have mutual aid at times coming in as far away as Fall River. So the demand is there. We just have opted out because we wanted to make sure that our citizens were protected. Okay, any questions on the salaries? I know that was a big mouthful. Like I said, I'm speeding on MSG right now. Start to sweat. Okay?
It's not that bad,
I'm good.
So then if you look at the other items that have an increase, let's talk about.
Excuse me, I think I would, on the salaries, there was no obvious question asked, and waiting for it to be asked. But I'll through you, Mr. Chair, I want to direct this question to Mr. Noble. As far as salaries, 511,000, there's a 7%, almost an 8% increase. Would you want to comment on the rationale for that increase, Mr. Noble?
Sure, that's last year's, we hadn't settled the contract with the fire and EMS last year. So you got the 2% from last year. You got the 2% projected for this year.
Brian, excuse me, he's talking my salary.
Oh, your salary?
Yeah, I'll address that for you.
Certainly.
No, I don't.
No, it's fine.
I don't want to.
I'm more than comfortable
I
talking
think
about
The selectmen voted a contract for to the fire chief, 3-year contract was approved that upped his salary to that number.
So it was a discretion of the selectmen. Do they base any of the findings from the wage study?
Yes, they did.
They did?
Yes.
Now, is that, those findings being applied universally to all budgets as they come forth, or now are they going to be just like before we talked about,
Not
spotting?
at this time.
It's not going to be a comprehensive,
It is not done at this time.
okay? Because I think we should be looking at on that line item, since there is a wage study and some action is being taken on that wage study, that I would think that the Finance Committee may want to hesitate increasing any of those salaries until a comprehensive type of presentation or made within all budgets, so we see how it's being implemented. Because we don't want to be doing corrections after corrections. Do you follow my drift?
I do. Yep.
So, Ms. Howcroft, if you allow me to speak on that for a minute. the last 15 years, the fire chief's position has never been a contracted position with the town. There's been a memorandum of agreement for wage and benefits, but there was never a contract. Mr. Noble, Ms. Hebert came to town, and on their on their to-do list was to get contracts for the executive level employees. So I had the grand pleasure of sitting with the Board of Selectmen and negotiating a contract, which was a eye-opening experience. And at the end of the day, we agreed to a 3-year contract with a 3% increase each year, as well as for this fiscal year coming up, a performance payment when certain benchmarks are achieved. And we are comfortable, I believe, that we're going to be able to meet those benchmarks. And we thought the prudent thing to do was to budget for those benchmarks being achieved. So that's still at the determinations, would be the recommendation of Mr. Noble to the Board of Selectmen in their vote to authorize those funds.
I have
And
no
just so
no objections
I
as
understand,
far
and
as
just so you know
the
that-
process by which the presentation. The reason I directed that question to Mr. Noble, because I wanted to get the position of the Board of Selectmen, as far as, because and I want to we want to basically see, or we should be to see that there's a comprehensive type of elevation of increase in salary, so it's fair based on that wage study, rather than trying to correct it again after. Because as we've heard anecdotally, that there may be patterns of discrimination within
I
the
wouldn't
wage.
say that.
Huh?
Not discrimination, inconsistency.
Inconsistencies, okay. I was thinking of sometimes, I'll take that.
Thank you.
Maybe a stronger term, and I agree. But at least we want to look at a comprehensive increase of all salaries of managers, rather than increasing into gaps, which the wage study was supposed to have addressed, and then do it all in one piece fairly to all managers. That's my.
This was part of the contract, is that correct? So this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the wage study, John. So it's not like this
He
is...
admitted that they used parts of the wage study in order to derive to the elements of the wage study. Mr. Noble just
Correct.
admitted that.
Yep.
So during negotiations, when it came to salary,
That was used. Oh,
they
okay.
used the wage study as a point of departure.
But it was still part of a contract process, John. correct?
Yes,
And not every...
It will apply to every other manager as well. So
It would apply to every other contract.
So the process you're talking about will be the same for every manager, and the question is, would it, using the wage study, as Mr. Noble had already admitted, in this case, they used elements of the wage study, will they be applying it to all other managerial positions, or will it doing it in a spotty or incremental way, which leads us sometimes into more difficulty in the future than what we're facing now, So that's why I wanted to, I agreed with everything you said, Mr. Gallagher, but I that's why I directed the question to Mr.
Sure.
Noble.
So, Mr. Chairman, the one area that I would like to kind of flag for further discussion at some point is overtime. As you know, we have lowballed the amount of overtime that's been budgeted with the 4th slot in both houses open. We're burning through overtime. I've already expended the $13,000 that was allocated on the EMS side of the house, covering those shifts, because part-timers aren't available. And on the fire side, right of first refusal goes to the full-timers. After them, it's the call firefighters. So in talking with Ms. Hebert, we thought we might want to address that now. But in further consideration, we thought we'll stand with the combined number with the 2% increase and wait to see what happens when we bring those new staff members on. Now, if everything goes according to plan, we may have a full complement of 8 full-timers July 1st. It may take, if negotiations go a little longer than that, that might get pushed back further and further. But at some point, the goal for fiscal year '20 is to have 8 full-time staff members. That will reduce the amount of overtime that we're spending. So I think I'm gonna beg the indulgence of this group, as I did with the Board of Selectmen last night, one more fiscal year of a low number of overtime. We'll address it with shifting money around at the end of the fiscal year. We may have to come to you for line item transfer at the end of the fiscal year. But moving forward, we should have a much better idea of how much overtime is gonna cost. And if we can fill those 2 slots, that's 48 hours a week in both places that's available, that needs coverage. And 76% of that on the fire side is being covered by full-timers. That will go away. Those 48 hours will be covered. Then we just have to worry about covering sick days and vacation days and things of that sort. But that's the normal course of business. So I don't want to budge off that number this year. But please know, when you see the transfer request at the end of the fiscal year, and that's the backstory there. And then quickly, because the guys were about to throw golf balls at me.
Clubs, actually.
So I provided you with a list of the other line items that are seeing increases. This is really wear and tear and the cost of doing business. Routine maintenance of vehicles, that's increased a little bit. We've got an extra vehicle, being the ladder. That impacted incrementally also the amount of money that we need for inspection. Software, I'm asking for some additional money. We're using a web-based scheduling system where it is much easier as an administrator and much easier as a user to log onto a website, submit availability, create the schedules, monitor trades, open shifts, sick time use, things of that sort. Training is increased this year as well by a couple of $100. This is a recertification year for the paramedics, and the town covers those expenses. Dues and subscriptions going up. The Plime event is the system that we got the grant for that removes the vehicle exhaust from both stations. We were able to bury the service agreements for the first 2 years in the article, in the special article. That is now exhausted, so I need to increase the line item to cover that expense. Small increase for our QA manager. Medical supplies, that's a 5% increase to keep track with the costs coming up. Medical waste, that's a ballpark figure. We've also paid the service agreement for the Sterilist system that we now own. I should be finding out shortly how much the service agreement will be. The first year it was included in the price. This is a continuation of that. That's been a great program, by the way. We received 2 boxes filled with shop containers from the Council on Aging. They're one of our partners, so they're talking to the seniors that go in there. If they have needles and syringes, they bring them to the Council on Aging. They call us, we go in, destroy them, they go out in the household garbage, and we have many, many residents that are coming in to drop off syringes. And we also, someone asked, I didn't know, I asked the question and was kind of surprised by the answer. Pet needles, we can destroy as well. I should have thought of that. The machine doesn't care if it's from a human or a pet. But in this community, there's quite a few folks who are administering medication to dogs and others that are then sitting at home with these syringes and needles and putting them in coffee cans and tossing them out. So we're handling that and safely destroying them as well. Requesting line item for 10 new pagers. We have 4 call firefighters going through the academy in a couple of weeks. And we have more part-time EMTs who are requiring pagers in order to be notified of calls off duty. And then the assessment center, you see there's a $3,000 request there. That is assuming that negotiations end with relaxing the way in which we hire and promote. So I'm trying not to say it, but we may be freed from the restrictions imposed by the Commonwealth on how we hire people and how we promote people. To be fair, I would like it to be as transparent a process as possible. There are assessment centers where fire service leaders come in, administer a written test, a tabletop exercise, interviews, and for those who are qualified for the position, and then they rank them and provide the hiring authority with recommendations. So it takes it out of just the hiring authority's decision, and it bases it on qualifications. Much better system than simply scoring well on a test on a Saturday morning at Derby High School, which is the way I ended up with the job, by the way. So there you have it. That's the budget for fiscal year 2020. As I said, coming in, it's overall a 2.4% increase from fiscal year 19. And the only caveat is that the salaries are still being, full-time salaries are being negotiated.
Now, the pages, Chief, should that be an article as opposed to being a budget item? or-
Mr. Noble, what say you? We do have a couple of articles. I'm not sure if this is the right forum to talk about those, but Brian earmarked what items could be put into the budget, operating budget, which one should be a standalone.
Yeah, I sort of consider these to be operating expenses because they're relatively reoccurring. And then we still have some, he'll talk to you about the articles for the capital budget. And based on usable life, price, that's how I make the
Would be a
determination.
replacement program?
Right. So it was my determination based on the price, the useful life, and the ongoing nature of the expense to put it in the operating budget.
So we have very sophisticated pages now, Mr. St. Jean. They have great range. They can handle up to 5 different tones, which is wonderful because we can have one for EMS and one for fire and one for mutual aid and things of that sort. It has a playback feature, a little recording device in it, so if you miss the call, you hit the playback and it gives you the message, because that's how we get a hold of our off-duty and call personnel. May I take a minute and explain to everyone how we used to do it back in your day?
Absolutely.
There was a siren on the garage, and one up in Station 2, and there was a blackboard on the sitting in the old fire station. And when the call would come in, the siren would go off. Mr. St. Jean and others would go out there and write down the address, and everybody would come here, drive by, see where the fire was, and drive off there.
I think that's a very efficient way of doing it.
That's a very efficient way of doing it. Yeah.
The good old days.
There
Things were
wasn't a
lot-
reoccurring charge for pages though during that time.
Yeah, we weren't asking for, how much am I asking for? 4,500 for pages. All we had to do is buy chalk and an
Except for the
eraser.
rain, nobody knew where to go.
One other question, Chief. Did you ever replace the captain who retired?
No,
So you're the only officer?
I'm the only officer.
on the
Yeah,
department?
that's also an issue that's being discussed at negotiations. With a implementation date to be determined. But, I make no secret of the fact that I'm on the back nine. And as the only officer in the department, it's probably prudent for the town to start putting a structure together so that if, in the event that I get hit by a bus, someone can submit the payroll on time and kind of start training someone to fill in. It's amazing I'm going to be able to retire at 40.
Any other questions? Comments?
Sorry, my own, it's not even a question, it's a comment. It shows pages as a 0% increase from 19 to 20, but there's no amount in 19, so I don't know if that's really a 0% increase.
It's a null vector.
I think I fixed that.
Oh, okay.
The 4,500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's showing it as a 0 increase. But I'm assuming the bottom line takes into consideration
It
the
does.
totals, so it doesn't sway the percentage increase.
I saw that too, but I fixed it.
Sorry.
On the reversion.
No,
It's
it's
the
okay.
anal retention is accounting in
If
me
you got
comes
my,
here.
if you
It's
got my
the
newer version, it
accountant
was.
Was that soaked in sarcasm?
Not as much as
Not as much
mine.
on you walk into the building, but
Chief, thank you very much.
very good, thank you.
Enlightening.
Thank you for your time.
Did you want to touch base on your capital items before you went with them?
Sure, do we remember them? The capital repairs, the capital items will come from EMS revenue. And those firefighters that I mentioned, the 4 recruits will need gear when they graduate in June. So I'll be asking, I believe it's $11,000 now for a set of 4. Pants, boots, helmets, gloves, coat. So that would be coming from EMS revenue. There are the tanker, which is the oldest piece of apparatus that we have. that's located out at Station 2 up on North Main Street. It carries 1,800 gallons of water. It is suffering from a leak that has been very difficult for local mechanics to diagnose. It requires some invasive work in order to give us the assessment of what needs to be done in order to repair it. So we're still kind of working on that number, how much we may need, either A, for the assessment, or B, for the assessment and repair, or just the repair. But again, those requests would come in to you, and the funding request would be through the ambulance receipt account. But it's a 1984. Yeah. Very low miles, so the chassis is in good shape. It's the water tank that sits on it that has settled over the years. The welds have cracked. It's not leaking to the point where it's inoperable. So 1,800, we're probably losing about 500 gallons before we get in there and fill it up. So we're down to bringing 1,300 gallons, which is still more than what the big trucks here carry. Those are carrying just 1,000 gallons. So we'll be looking to get those repairs done. I wouldn't advance the purchase of a new one simply because the costs for any fire apparatus is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. We do need a tanker, but I'm sure we can do better than.
$350,000?
For the needs for this town, something used, something that's in good shape. First, let's try the repair and see how much additional life we get out of it. If that fails, then I'll come and talk to you about using funding for a replacement, but it wouldn't be brand new.
Talk to Lexington Fire Chief.
Yeah, see what he has lying around.
That's good.
I don't mean to spike the ball, but I'm sure you saw the town of Fairhaven just took receipt of a new ladder truck.
Yes.
Yeah,
Quite
beautiful.
pricey. How much?
Beautiful.
Just want to remind you, you're on TV, please.
Probably the same amount as my budget. Darn close, actually. So, okay,
Very good.
very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, chief, have a good night. Stay away from that Chinese food. And the next budget hearing we have this evening is for the golf department. Mr. Dana Presbizewski and Mr. Steve Tibbles.
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, and thank you for taking the time tonight to review this proposal. I have good news. We're basically looking to level fund the 2020 proposal. So last year, if you look at your final numbers, $1,464,000. We're doing the same for this year. Before we go into the additions, I would like to work backwards and look at the subtractions. So from that base number, if you were to take a look at your equipment leases, object number 580090, we are looking to reduce that from $40,000 to $11,753. And we also, there's a reduction in the long-term debt interest from $74,550 to $66,150. So any increases we have in the proposed budget comes from the reduction in those line items. Now, with doing that, we in previous years had equipment leases. The golf committee and ourselves have discussed at the current time with the state of the economy and the state of the economy and being where it's at and probably on the downslope. We've hit the top of the market and it's probably going to take a downturn. We were looking to, as we head into the final stretch of financing the golf course out through 2027, they felt it was appropriate not to do a five-year lease for equipment and
Should categorize that as turf equipment.
turf
We do
equipment.
have a
Turf
lease-
equipment. The lawnmowers,
We do have a lease agreement with our golf carts.
yes,
It was decided, the golf committee decided they didn't want to take on any additional debt.
correct.
So what they decided to do is repair what we have and extend its life as best we can. And if we needed individual items, to try to identify those, to identify those individual items and to pay for those individual items in a lump sum payment, so there's no financing involved.
Correct. So yeah, if you look at your line item, 524167, R&M equipment maintenance was at 13,000. We are increasing that to 25,000 because we are now having, equipment that's aging. It's getting used on a daily basis, hydraulic lifts, wear and tear, it's gonna take its toll. So Steve's guys take very good care of their equipment, and he'll be addressing and keeping us up to date on anything that presents itself to be an issue outside of whatever that number. If it should ever exceed the 25,000, we will be ahead of that with his input.
The majority of your equipment is 8 years or older, the functioning equipment that you use on a daily basis. We were able to maintain a $13,000 a year expense in the past because we were renewing equipment every 4 years to 5 years, so we were making major repairs on hydraulic systems and whatnot. We were basically changing oil, sharpening blades, replacing bed knives. Now that we're keeping items 7, 8, 9 to 10 years, they're costing significantly more. Most of the machines in the industry, depending on the use category, the distributors will tell you that they're, if you don't want to incur those later expenses, roll them over at that particular time. So what we're doing, and 25,000 is a good number. It all depends on what happens during the course of the year. We're making improvements on our equipment now, such as replacing hydraulic hoses and whatnot, because we can sometimes predict with a certain amount of age that we may have some issues with those. Hydraulic motors, engines, we really can't predict those. So if they occur at a certain point in time, we either, we'll have to repair them, and a lot of those repairs are significant expenses given the size of that particular line item. On average 18-hole golf course, in our same budget categories, probably budgets between $30,000 and $35,000 a year for equipment repair and maintenance.
So with additional increases that we've made inside of, in our other line items, we did the fringe benefits, maintenance employees. We've gone from 23,425 to 29,672, 26% increase. We have additional staff now that utilizes our health benefits, as well as workman's comp and any
Well, we have,
unemployment.
we're
that may occur.
probably the single department in town that lays people off. I don't believe there's another one, Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And so-
Summertime when school lays off.
Yeah, well, but, so that budget line item incurs our cost for insurance, our cost for unemployment expense with those people who get laid off file, and
I think as well as retirement too, is that not correct too? For, retirement, does that come out of that
No.
line item?
no. No, the only two items that we have in that line item are, or only two categories in that line item are health insurance expense and the unemployment expense.
Now, with a question on the, the seasonal, is it, have you looked at the cost of operating full-time and doing, your staff and doing maintenance, as well as grounds maintenance, everything else throughout the winter, rather than having them on unemployment?
Well, we have, I've looked at that. The only issue I have with that, the majority of the work that we do in the winter is basically bull work. It's tree pruning, it's brush cutting, and you're looking at the chainsaw operator and the brush cutter. The other people are hauling material and putting them into chippers and whatnot. I have enough of that work to keep 4 or so people going, because we only have the apparatus to do that. We only have, you can only operate one chainsaw at a time, and you can only operate one chipper. The other issue with that is, with the exception of one other person on my staff and some employees, I'm the youngest person there at 59. So I'm not going, I didn't think it feasible to put a 72-year-old fairway mower out in the woods dragging limbs to a chipper. So I've got myself, my assistant, and two other individuals, one of which who's actually a retired Marine who I believe is 72, who does a pretty good job of that. But we do have an interesting situation, the way in which we employ folks. The beginning of the season, once we get started, we're a little bit slow, but then as soon as the grass starts kicking in growing, in order for us to be prepared for play, we have to have a higher number. Most of those are part-time folks, and as we slow down at the end of the year, turf slows down, we don't have as much work, so we don't have a need for that many. So we have to have that seasonal shift and change.
Okay.
And in the past, it had worked out pretty good because we had a lot of retired guys. They fit right into that. And unfortunately, it seems as though the source of retired folks has dwindled and disappeared in the past couple of years.
Thank you for that information. I think it's helpful to us.
We also reduced communications and advertising.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Yes.
couple of questions.
Sure.
You said that, so the interest on the debt dropped to 66,000. What's the terms of the debt now? Presumably, we must have refinanced because all of us on our interest payments dropped, either that or we paid a principal payment. We paid, no, we didn't pay principal.
Well, it was refund, was it
We
a year ago?
refinanced out to
It was
2027.
before we
Yeah.
came, I think like right before we
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right before,
years.
years?
yeah, Alan's
Let's see.
the last year
Okay.
Alan's.
We're looking it up.
I can pull it up.
Thanks. So while we're looking that up, I'm sorry, can we just go back to the, I'm not sure, I think because I don't remember the history behind the lease contracts. I think I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball, so I apologize. I might be
no
asking you
problem.
questions you've already answered. So in fiscal year 19 was the first year we put the equipment leases for $40,000. So that
No,
was,
you've had equipment leases in the budget.
Yes.
The first one started in 2006.
okay, so
From
it's
2000.
just buried in a different line item then?
Correct.
Okay,
Well, the
Yeah.
other thing too, I just want to jump in. You're gonna see this across the board.
Yeah.
We used to have the capital outlay section. We merged it all into expenses because I'm not really
Right.
sure why it was ever separated in
Separated
the
out.
first place.
okay.
So the amounts that are in there are the same amounts that were, but they're just merged.
Oh, okay, okay, thank you. All right, so that 40,000 existed in some other line item,
Under
presumably.
equipment.
It was
Yeah.
under different categories, Julie said. When Julie and Brian came on board, we
Yeah.
looked at the budget and actually segregated it out more appropriately to reflect
Julie, what did you say it was under?
expenses.
We had we had the salary totals, expense
Right.
totals, and then we had a capital outlay total. Those line items, so they are the line items that were under capital outlay, but
Okay.
they were just separated, so they were voted as separate line items. You'll see that across the board for a lot of different departments, like
Okay.
even the town clerk had $200 capital outlay budget, I don't know why. So
Okay.
we eliminated the capital outlay breakout and
Yep.
just put it all up into expenses.
Okay, I guess so, I still don't, I totally hear what you're saying, and I
If
vaguely
you go
remember
back,
that
go all the way back to
reclassification.
FY16, you see the golf cart leases at 83,000?
Golf cart leases, yep,
That was what
Okay.
incorporated both numbers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
That
so
is what-
I guess, yeah, so that's what I'm looking at, is the fact that in fiscal year 16, 17, 18, there's nothing in there for equipment leases.
Correct, but it was in the golf cart leases.
It was in the, so okay, so golf cart leases was 83, then it dropped to 45. In 17, still no equipment leases. Then in fiscal year 18, it's down to 37 for golf carts, still nothing in equipment
Yeah,
leases.
there wasn't an outlay though. 'Cause I
Okay.
don't know why
I
it's
guess
not
I'm
presented
trying
this
to
way
figure
here,
out
but-
where these expenses originally were to begin with.
Right.
We segregated it out, and now the decision's made to cut back on those expenses. So my question is really more in line with, is this feasible, right?
As Dave had mentioned, they were combined at first.
Yeah.
First actual equipment lease, I'll give you a little bit more history than you probably wanted to know. You all know that the golf course initially was under a management company.
Yep.
And in 2006, the town decided to take over both ends of the operation. In 2006 was the first equipment lease. Now that equipment lease was a 5-year, I don't think it was a dollar buyout, but it was a 5-year lease at, I'm not exactly sure, somewhere between $35,000 to $40,000 a year. At the culmination of that lease, some equipment was kept. A new lease was entered into in 2011.
Yep.
And that's when that cost was carried up to 2016. Then there was no additional lease entered into. There was a couple of items bought separately.
Okay.
But that dollar amount was still carried along in the budget as it was this past year. There was no equipment leases in FY 2018. There were 19, there were 1 or 2 items purchased, but there was no equipment lease package entered into.
Okay.
But that number, as you know, alluded to, the chief alluded to, I believe, with an employee situation, the number was still carried,
Right.
Yeah.
even though it wasn't
And it
in
was
there.
used for equipment in.
Well, that's the reason it was carried. If we weren't going to enter into a lease, but we
Right.
did have a significant malfunction, at least we could replace that one
Okay,
particular item.
so because we're in fiscal year 19 and we're still in the budgeted numbers as opposed to the actual numbers, that's why we still see the 40 there. So how much
Yes.
have we used of the 40, do you guesstimate?
Right now, how much of the 40 have we used? None.
No? Okay.
No. That's a topic for discussion later because we have some equipment issues that have run us into.
Okay.
Which we've discussed with the golf committee, depending on how the season, this is the way we've decided to manage it moving forward is, if there's a trouble spot, and Steve is
Yep.
aware of it, we're gonna have a meeting and say, all right, I've got this piece, it's on its last leg, this, I need, priority wise, we need this and this and this, and that's what we should go after and buy.
I'm
Now, you
just-
can get more for your money
Yeah.
if you do a capital lease and set it up. However, the golf committee had decided that we didn't want to tie into any long-term debt as we
Yeah.
wind down on the bond.
Yeah.
So without strapping ourselves, we can be a little bit quick-footed and
Yeah.
react better. And Steve has got sound judgment, so we're trusting him to stay on top of it and keep us informed.
I'm just looking at it from a perspective of like, is this realistic? Or are we gonna put ourselves in a position where 6 months into fiscal year 2020, we're looking at a reserve fund transfer because we don't have the wherewithal to cover whatever it is that we need? So that's how I'm coming
Well,
to
we
it,
can-
right?
For fiscal 2020, no, I don't think you'll have that type of an issue.
Okay,
We have to make it, at this stage, adopting that ideology
Yeah.
that Dana just mentioned from the golf committee, we do have to make an assessment at the end of each year.
yeah,
Because, my equipment, their turf equipment isn't as expensive as fire equipment, but it is very expensive. And we would not want to put ourselves in the position where we're sitting there in the middle of July having to make a major expense. So we assess the ability of a piece of equipment on an annual basis to move forward through that next coming season. And that's why right now, we're in a position where we've done that with all our major equipment, and we're making the significant repairs now to put us through this season, as we won't be at that point again next year. Since there was a question of whether or not there was going to be a lease or whether there wasn't, I didn't put a lot of money into machines and then have them turned around and given to somebody 3 or 4 months down the road. Now that they've told me, live with what you got, make it last 8 to 10 years, well, I've got to fix some of the things that I Band-Aided. So we're fixing some of the things that we Band-Aided right now. So we should be good for fiscal 2020, and at the end of 2020, come October, November, things slow down, we reassess all the items there, and then we look forward to seeing what might have to replace or make major repairs.
Do you have a mechanic, a machine mechanic, or
Yes.
does everything go out?
Yes, no, I have a mechanic,
You do.
very good one at that. And I
And
just,
part of the mindset behind doing the staggering is so that we didn't have to do it all in one shot. Not everything is gonna go down at the same time, and that we have to re-up and get all new equipment. If we do it this way, hopefully we can kind of work our way through our problem issues and maintain forward progress.
Yeah, you can determine the useful lives and ways in which you can extend useful lives. There's certain pieces of equipment that will not have a longer life. You know, the greens mower will not have a life longer than a fairway mower, just because you're cutting 7 days a week and sometimes 2, possibly 3 times in a given day.
And I credit Steve and his staff. These guys, they're very meticulous about their equipment. I mean, when it's used, it comes down. They take great care of it. They track it. They clean it every day. I mean, you walk through his garage at the end of the day, there's not a blade of grass on the floor anywhere to be seen. So if anybody's going to maintain the equipment in good condition to get through this process, Steve is definitely the person.
And yet, we do have a full-time mechanic, full-time.
You keep him all year
golf course
round?
Yes, golf course mechanic. As a matter of fact, with the exception of emergencies, right now, this is his straight-out time. Because we can't afford, during the course of golf season, we can't afford to take a piece of equipment out of use for any significant amount of time, because it'll disrupt the quality of the course and have an adverse impact on our customers. So we Band-Aid them as best we can, get them back out there, and then if we have a rainy day or two, then we'll break it down.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Just curious, the app that you guys have set up for rounds of golf to get more people playing, is that still working? Do you still have that?
We use the Golf Now.
Yeah, Golf Now, that's what it
Yes,
was.
it's fantastic.
It's been good for you guys?
Fantastic. Yep, absolutely. I have no complaints with it whatsoever. We utilize their contacts to build our database and to build our customer base, basically.
Right.
Acushnet being alphabetized, that works in our advantage price-wise. We're usually one of the better prices in the area. So if anyone pulls up, if they're 25 miles out and they want to pull up a golf course within 30 miles, 25 miles, we're going to be one of the top 3 listed because our price is always good and alphabetically we're listed at the top. So, I mean, if this was, if the town was named something different, it might not work out so well, but for us, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Good.
So I did decrease the communications and advertising by $1,000, and I put that into the pro shop because not last season, but the season prior to, I don't know if everybody recalls, it was a perfect summer. We had like one day was 90 degrees, everything else was like 80 degrees. So we went through all of our golf balls, all of our gloves, everything that I had in stock, underneath the cabinets. I pushed through. So I needed more money this year to get that replenished. So the golf committee agreed to transfer $1,000 from that line item into the pro shop so I can get that squared away. The credit card fees, if you look right underneath that, the credit card fees go back to FY18 actual. You can see the fees were $26,989. Last year we budgeted $20,000, but it should be in the vicinity of $28,000. That's what we spend annually for credit cards. Well, everybody processes a lot of people process their golf on credit cards, and we sell the Pro Pass packages, which are $800, $1,500, $2,200. Nobody's coming in with $2,200 in cash to buy that. That's a credit card swipe all day. So I know Brian said he's working on trying to work a better rate for that. If we can lower that a tiny bit, every little bit helps.
Brian, what's the current rate? Do you know?
I apologize, I haven't got that in front of me. So, I do know that there are better rates out there, and sometimes I think you gotta go shopping
Yeah,
just
you
to
gotta
be
push
sure
for
to
it.
do that.
Yeah.
And I think, I think Christy tried maybe five or 6 years ago. She had worked at, and that's the rate we're currently on. But as you know, it goes, if you're not looking for something better, every year there's probably an incremental increase. And then we're
Based on
6
volume,
years,
too.
yeah, 6 years out. So we're probably due to dive into that and see if there's something better out there. In the other increases, if you go down, there's the pro shop that I just discussed. If you look at maintenance, fertilizer, and pesticides, Steve has spoken with his vendors, and they've hinted to
Your price increases across the board are going to go anywhere from 3 to 5%, depending on product. A lot of times, we do some early, what they call early season ordering. If you order a substantial enough volume, you can lock into the previous year's prices. Well, this year, we didn't have the funds available because of the season we went through to do a significant amount of early order purchasing. So, in speaking with the distributors, that's what they recommended, that price increase. Now, what we do in a pesticide, especially in a pesticide situation, is I put together a program based on what has happened in the past, what weather's going to look like in the future, and it's an estimate of what I think we're going to need. In some circumstances, we may need more, other circumstances, we may need less. But to have the flexibility in there, and have that to cover any cost increases in particular products that we may have to get, we increased by 5% in those 2 lines.
And if anybody recalls us, the weather we had this summer, Steve had, or if anybody's been out there golfing, talking to the golfers in the market area, there was a lot of humidity this year and high heat, and our course was in impeccable condition all season long, and there were a lot of surrounding golf courses, country clubs, private clubs that were losing their greens, and we were just seeing influxes of different customers from Rhode Island, Boston, Lakeville, Dartmouth, everywhere. They were coming in, and due to our conditions and the way Steve kept the place. And he is, again, very attentive, very aware of the conditions. Each green is its own little climate control microcosm, and he's on top of it. So,
well, it was a difficult year for everybody. Started out dry, then it got wet, then it got humid, and then the rain didn't stop. And unfortunately, if you had any loss of turf during the course of the year, you had no recovery period because it kept on raining in September, it rained in October, it rained in November. And this type of weather that we're having right now is probably the worst winter we could have after something like that. Because the rain, when the ground gets wet and you have a quick freeze like we did the other night, it could damage the crown of the plant, and then if it damages the crown, you have some dead grass. So it was a difficult year. We had to use a lot of our inventory. Inventory's down to about 0 now, but hopefully we'll have a nice dry spring coming up. Maybe it's rained out by now, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow will be rained out. But we'll see. The other thing you might want to mention is the only other items that we had of an increase were in the salary range.
Yeah,
and there was a 2% cost of living as Brian had recommended when the budget was put together. Neither Dana nor myself have negotiated contracts. We both do have contracts. And our staff, you'll see in both circumstances, in clubhouse staff and maintenance staff, there was no increase. It was explained to us if we were to provide increases or have possible increases for staff, we were going to have, first of all, we have to complete the wage and classification that Mr. Hawcroft alluded to earlier, because our employees are involved, our staffs are involved in that. We do not have union employees
We have
either
not-
in the
not
pro
union
shop
shop.
or the golf course. And then once that's determined and those numbers are worked out, then they will be applied to our annual hours for each staff member and the 188,690 number. It may involve reduction of some hours in some instances, which is basically starting folks a little bit later in the season and maybe laying folks off a little bit earlier. But we won't really know that until we get the wage and classification number.
Any other questions, comments?
I just, This has to go through, the golf committee has reviewed the budget, but the Board of Selectmen has not. And this will be presented to the Board of Selectmen on February 19th. So,
Oh, I need to get on that email list because I wasn't on the email list for this meeting. If I hadn't happened to walk down the hall and I always look at the postings. I used to be a conservation commission and I would have missed the meeting.
well, Kathy only speaks to that, who's important. She spoke to Dana.
I know, I'm the guy who spends all the money. You know,
That's why you didn't
I don't
invite
make, I just spend it. I'm the cost center.
Kathy, did you get Steve's
I don't
email?
actually emailed like the info at the
Yeah,
golf
that's-
course.
That's Dana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I thought everybody.
So if you give your
was
email
happy.
to, if you give your email to
This
Kathy,
meeting.
she'll make sure that you get it in the
Oh,
future.
okay, thank you.
But everybody should have a new email list. It should be your first initial, your last name,
Yeah, it
@acushnet.ma.us.
should be on the list. I'm on the list. I mean, I get emails from Julie and
Right.
Lisa and everybody, and you, so I'm on that one.
We'll make sure that you get added to the list. Or purposely ignored, one or the other.
I always get purposely. That's why I go to work early in the morning, because there's nobody there at 5 o'clock that purposely ignore me.
So, will we be doing the weight and classification at that meeting as well?
Yeah, the job descriptions are, I had Lisa merge the job descriptions with your comments and approve them. So those will go before the golf committee for approval before the meeting on the 19th. Then the wage and classification, the job descriptions, and your budget will go before the Board of Selectmen on February 19th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
We hope to see you all out
Yeah.
golfing.
Come on out.
Even if you don't, I think we could find a pair of rental clubs somewhere.
Okay.
We should do a group event.
Oh, no.
Fixing divots.
You could be a caddy.
That's the nice thing that's why there's 19 holes in golf.
I'll
First
drive the
18 and then
carts.
the last.
There you go.
I will drive the carts, but it would be
Your
an
maintenance
embarrassing
fee will
sight.
go up.
Yeah, right.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
The agenda calls for the Board of Health, however, they couldn't make it this evening, so Kathy rescheduled them for next week. The old business? We don't have any old business that they would like to discuss. Okay, there being none, we'll move on to new business.
I have two items, informational items only. Kathy's passed out the updated Finance Committee handbook. This is a very extremely important document for any Finance Committee member. It outlines what your duties, responsibilities, and a lot of the terminologies that we apply many times. So I suggest, that you get time, go over it and update, update your information with it, because I think it's one of the best documents I've read on how finance committees should be operating. And again, responsibilities under state law to the taxpayers of Acushnet. Number two, just tomorrow's article, we'll have an article in the Standard Times. It's on the educational reform that Governor Baker is pushing, which the legislature will probably make changes to. But some of those changes are going to be very important to Acushnet. It might, affect some of our future deliberations in a couple of years, depending on what type of document they produce in their formulas and changing the educational reimbursement formulas. I don't know if Mr. Noble has kept track of.
Yeah, I was on a conference call today with the governor's office and listening to how they want to do it. And I hate to say it quite this way, but tell me the bottom line. And then I can compare to see whether it's a better deal.
Mhm.
Obviously, the intent is to give us more money in educational reimbursement. But, they went through long explanations. They've never really come back with the full regional transportation for the vocational school. That should have been funded at 100%, you know, it hasn't been. So, you know, they're making, you know, promises about upping that. I'd like the circuit breaker fully funded, not funded at 78%. You know, those are my dreams. We'll see what they come up with. Today was a discussion about the process the governor was planning to use. Next week is more specifically how, and then somewhere along the line in about a month, I'll know what the number is. They're making, you know, promises that it won't be any less than last year. I'd like it to be a lot more than last year. Somewhere in the middle is what I'm gonna get, so.
Changing the net school spending figures as well.
Yeah,
And
well, they're gonna change the net
Well, I
school
think it'll
spending
affect us
calculation.
because it was a
and-
phony figure anyway.
It always was. I mean, if you put your school department at net school spending, you'd have rebellion in the town. You know, ridiculous. So, you know, it doesn't have any rationale to the normal. If we have net school spending at 24%, the average community spends 24% above net school spending. So how can it be net school spending when the average community is 24% above? So give me a real number. Give me a real formula. Stop with the fiction.
So let's see, so I thought if we're, you know, maintaining interest, there's another item in the state of the, in the governor's budget, and that's on using, you know, property, real estate transfer
Yes,
for, to deal with some of the issues with climate change, having
yes.
funds
And
available.
affordable housing. Actually, the tax that they want to apply on
The real estate.
the real estate transfer, essentially the stamp tax, if you will, if you want to
Mhm.
use Patriot Act, that's go to for affordable housing.
It's not gonna go to climate change?
No. The general,
Relief?
if you followed closely what's going on right now.
Because I was following it, excuse me, I'm following the
Yeah.
Globe today.
There's another move to raise the basic tax rate back. So from 5% back to 5.15.
Mhm.
And that number is to pay for the climate change, the transportation initiatives, et cetera. So.
I'm sorry, the tax rate, which tax rate? Income tax rate?
Income tax rate.
Because we're at 5.05 now.
5.05 now, and they want to move to 5, it
Wanna
used to
go
be
back.
5.15, and there's even a possibility of 5.25. So I hope, you know, I mean, I don't, I'm not going to get into the politics of raising taxes, but he's putting on a lot of programs, you got to fund them.
But that was my question.
Right.
But I was talking about the property transfer funds.
That tax will go for affordable housing.
Affordable for housing. I thought.
What they're gonna do is raise the rate on the highest value of properties.
Correct.
Or higher value of properties. So I forgot what the threshold was, but if I recall correctly, and I'm sure I'm wrong, I think it was above 399,000. So, but that would go to support efforts for affordable housing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No?
No, I just,
Okay.
I guess I'm wondering what's going on. We just dropped the tax rate. And so because we reached certain economical milestones, and so now all of a sudden we're gonna raise it again. I mean, that's gonna take,
Well, I mean, you look at a couple of things that governor's programs that are right now not funded. The climate change thing is what they're talking about, the coastal erosion,
Right.
which is mostly affected, not the south coast, but the south shore and the north shore. And they're dumping a ton of money into saving Duxbury and Situate, and I'd like to see some money down here.
But that's what
Yeah.
I was trying to drive at as far as.
So there's that, and, you know, they've got houses washing out to sea and all that kind of stuff, so, and the Cape has got that issue too. So that's where they want to put some money. There's another initiative, obviously, the MBTA, which is supported by general tax dollars. They want to put $5 billion into the T. Got to come from somewhere,
I'm looking at our road conditions as far as rising water
right?
and where we can get some
Right.
relief.
Well, we did, I mean, this is the other problem you're running. We normally get on average about $350,000 in road money from the state, and This year, we got a supplemental of another $61,000. And not that I'm not grateful for the $61,000, but it doesn't go very far.
I know.
And we have the pavement management plan, which we did about a year and a half ago, which tells us, where we spend our money and how we spend our money, and we're integrating that with the CWMP. So when we open a street to do the sewer, or we open a street to do the water, we'll be only opening it once. But let me take a street that I'm very well aware of, Slocum. It's in pretty bad shape, but it's not on the agenda to be done until 2021. If I had more money, I would advance that schedule. But when I say it's 2021 for Slocum, then you gotta imagine what the condition of the streets are that are before it. And so $350,000 doesn't go very far, or now $411,000 doesn't go very far. So one of the things you're gonna see when Dan comes in is he's asking for an increase in his materials and paving. And we have to discuss at some point how we're going to do that. Because putting another, let's say, $200,000 to $250,000 into the operating budget would be difficult, but we might be able to do an article and move it from free cash to an article for road maintenance. So that obviously it would carry over from multiple years. If he didn't spend it in one year, it would carry to the next, or he could plan a little further out that we could make our road money, we could augment our road money from the state and do a little more each year to try to catch up a little bit on our road maintenance. The chapter money the state gives us is just simply not enough.
We'll have to look at probably in the future with rising waters, that there's a lot of prevention. We're gonna get ahead of the ball and have the road repairs and then prevent the roads.
We're having some problems on Upper Main Street, partly on the state highway, some of on our obligation, with the runoff of groundwater.
Yes.
So this has been the wettest period of time in 7 years. Whether that's because of global warming, I don't know. But, it could be just the typical, cycle. But, right now, the water table is the highest it's been in 7 years. We're not having a lot of problems with what I call popping, where the water comes underneath the road and undermines the road. We have an awful lot of water coming on top of the road and basically destabilizing driving. Try driving down Main Street this morning, it was a thrill.
Diggle's Curve has always been,
Yeah, we send sanders and salt up onto the state highway. You're not supposed to do that, but it's either that or have accidents. And so we did that today because of the volume of ice. So, we're on top of it, but we're not really experiencing what I call pressure up. We're getting wash on at the moment.
But the snowplow line item is doing good.
For the moment. What's the forecast for the weekend? It might change.
1.5 inches.
I've decided to ban all further snow for the rest of the summer, or for the winter.
Thank you.
Because we can't afford it, and I'm not willing to spend the money.
We'll second that.
If successful, we'll take another look at the wage and classification study.
All right, moving right along, we'll have the meeting minutes. January 9th, 2019.
We'll let you.
Absent was Jackie Stanley, present was Acushnet, Sue Delgado, Bob Ferrera, John Harcroft, Aaron Flynn, and Michael St. Ange.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. October 10th, we have absent Susan Delgado and Jackie Stanley. Otherwise, we have Michael Boucher, Robert Ferrera, John Harcroft, Robert McGlynn, and Michael St. Ange. Motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Then we have April 11th. Absent was Susan Delgado, Michael St. Ange, and Jackie Stanley. Present was Dr. Boucher, Rona Ferrera, John Howcroft, and Eric McGlynn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. That takes care of our meeting minutes. Our next meeting is going to be scheduled at the library from this week to next week. And we're going to host the Board of Health, Soil Board, Park Recreation, Council on Aging, and the library. Those have all been confirmed. And that meeting will take place at the library, 7 o'clock, on January 30th. We still have a number of departments that are still pending on the schedule, but Kathy's working with those department heads to get them scheduled. If you see anyone or any department that's not listed on the budget hearing schedule, and you would like to hear from them, just let Kathy know, and we'll reach out and schedule them for a budget hearing.
Ready? Motion to adjourn?
There will be no further business. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn?
Second. Motion made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.